Today, I have with me a teacher from a classical school that I visited a few years ago in Arkansas, and her name is Charlene. She teaches kindergarten and first grade, and I'm excited to have her on today because we're going to talk about narration in the classroom with the little ones. And I am really excited because I know that all my listeners are going to really be blessed to hear Charlene's story and her testimony of her experience with her little ones in her classroom. Charlene, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I would like you to start off telling our listeners how you came into classical education.
Okay. Well, I'm a fairly new teacher. I'm only in my fourth year. My husband and I were foster and adoptive parents, and I eventually went back to school just to have something conducive to having little ones at home. And I've always been interested in education. I just never explored that when I was younger. So fast forward, I do believe it was a God thing that I came to this school. I didn't really know much about charter schools. I didn't know much about classical education. I grew up in a public school. My biological girls grew up in a public school. And so I was offered a position and I took it because I wanted to teach. And so that's how I'm still here. I love it here. I love my job. I love what a classical education offers, but I still have a lot to learn.
hmm when I came to your school, was that your first year? Because that was a few years back.
It was,
So it's
yes.
already been 4 years.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And you've been teaching kindergarten for 3, and this is your first year as first grade. Is that
You are
correct?
correct, yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you heard me talking about narration, tell
Mhm.
our listeners how it made you feel and what were your thoughts? What was going through your mind?
Very overwhelmed. I'm
Hmm.
still trying to learn what classical education really means, or I was at the time. So very overwhelmed. You had a picture study there as well. I don't recall the story that you had brought, that you read from, but I think I also remember how difficult it was to
Hmm.
narrate something back. But there's something about that moment that sparked my interest. I knew that that's what our headmaster, the direction that we needed to go as teachers. And so I just took it upon myself to do a lot of research on my own, to explore and understand it just a little bit better.
Hmm. Hmm. So what was the process when you went into the classroom with the kids and you knew you were going to try doing this? How long did it take you to even try it? Did you wait a few weeks or did you jump right into it?
I did not. The first year, I don't think I knew what I was doing at all. I had a lot to learn that first year. Obviously, it was a
Hmm.
brand new school.
Hmm.
But my second year, I probably did it here and there, mostly in just literature, reading beautiful stories, and still fully didn't understand um, the process of a really good, narration setting. I would say I really began to understand it not or my second year in kindergarten. So last year was my third year, and last year I understood it enough, had read a few books on it, researched for the narration for Charlotte Mason. But last year I is when I did narration in all subjects.
Oh,
Literature,
wow.
history, science. If I read a story, we narrated it.
So let me ask you, what were your sources for Charlotte Mason when you were started looking into it yourself?
Really a lot of just whatever I found online. Barney, is that I found
Jason
some
Barney?
yes, I found
Good.
some website about or from his program. Really, I read a book by Karen Glass,
Hmm.
bits and pieces of that, and I just took the all this started just by bits and pieces
Okay,
of
good.
research. Mhm.
So tell our listeners when you did start kind of diving into it a little bit more. What happened to your students and to you? What was going on? Like, did it transform them? Did it transform you? Because I'd love to hear your perspective as well as a teacher. Tell us some stories and tell us what was going on in your classroom.
So in the beginning of last year, when we really just dug into, or when I really dug into narration, I started the year with 18 students, and 13 of them, 12, 13 were boys. So I had a very boy heavy class, some challenging students. So there was a lot of attention that needed to be grabbed. And so I had just understanding that narration helps with the art of attending, the art of attention, learning
Hmm.
that from my old headmaster. And so my thoughts were, this is the year I'm going to do it. I began narrating the first week of school. And by the end of over time, it was very, for lack of a better term, painful in the beginning. As I had discovered through research that Charlotte Mason, the best way to narrate is just to remain quiet. And
Hmm.
like they're going to feel awkward. It's going to be very uncomfortable. And we did that for many weeks. Um, many students were chomping at the bit. They would want to answer for them, but I could see that in their expression that they were really thinking and trying to sequence the story the best they could. So I gave them more time. And over the year, we narrated um, a story, The Thanksgiving Day by Alice
Hmm.
Dagliesh.
Yes, yes,
Yes, that's a difficult book
yeah. For
to
kindergarten, yeah.
kindergarten. I didn't read large passages, obviously smaller, but they were able to do it in kindergarten. And over time, and by the end of the school year, I had one little girl, we read The Ugly Duckling. And by the end of the story, um, she, a girl spoke up and she said, but the real question is, why was that egg there in the first place?
This is a kindergartner.
Kindergartner, yes. I was so struck by that because I felt we had accomplished it. It was very difficult in the beginning, very hard, especially with a group full of boys. Um, but one of the things when we would narrate, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read you a story. What am I going to do? And what we say in the room is ask questions. And so, really, the question was, tell me what you said, or tell me what we just read in your own words. And we
Okay.
started off very small,
So it really has helped, from what I'm hearing, it's helped the students to become better thinkers.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're asking good questions.
Yes.
So yeah, so this is another interesting question. When you finish narrating, do the students often sometimes like do they want to talk about the story more deeply? Do they have questions? Because
Um,
sometimes you end a narration and you're kind of done, and then other times I think kids want to talk about it. Tell me your experience with that.
I mean, honestly, I think the experience is that we kind of are have wrapped up. Let me think, is there a story that we really um The Ugly Duckling, that was probably a pivotal moment at the end of the year where they really it was, tell me why you say that. Tell me more. And many wanted to offer their thoughts on why that egg was there.
Mm-hmm.
Um I can't really think of it. That's just feels like the pivotal moment for me. But it took quite some time to get there.
Mm-hmm. 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 Do you feel like it's helped the kids with attention in other ways,
Oh,
in other areas? Give us some
abs-
stories about that. Yeah, tell us about that.
absolutely. Because I have several of my students from last school year, since I moved up to first grade, I see it just on a daily basis. Just today, and I believe we were in math. Um, I just turned around and many of the students that I had last year were sitting there waiting for what's coming next. Rather than talking to their neighbor or fidgeting, they were waiting as to what's next. And so that art of attention, and I can see it in narration as well when I narrate, especially during literature. Science is a little difficult right now to engage, but with literature, we just read Hansel and Gretel. Silence in the room. They really, really want Actually, now that I think about it, we did ask some questions. It's a Brothers Grimm story, so there was some gasps and some shock through the story, and so we talked about, talked through that a little bit.
So they are asking questions
We are,
because they're
yes,
attending well.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and one of the true art of really being a good learner is when you get to the place where you ask good questions, the learner asking good questions. And narration helps you to make such deep connections with the text that it makes you think about it and want to ask more questions. It's very typical. But it's kind of surprising to see that that's happening in kindergarten so
It's
young.
beautiful. Even like I said, I narrated, if I read a passage, read a story, read the curriculum book, we narrated it. And
Mhm.
it wasn't just tell me what we just read. It was recall. We would open the day or the subject with tell me what we learned yesterday or this week about Abraham Lincoln or rainbows or the water cycle. And last year I was asked a few questions during our unit on rainbows that I couldn't answer.
Oh, how'd you handle that?
I said, "You know what? That's a great question. I don't have the answer for you, but I will do some research and I will get it for you the next day." Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You could also tell them, hey, ask your mom and dad, go to the library and get some
Yeah.
books and come back
Mhm.
and tell us.
True. Yes. Working on that. Yes.
Yeah, that's super fun. Well, I'm really excited that this is happening. So you're how many times a day are you asking the kids to narrate? This is another, a lot of people are just they're only practicing narration maybe once or twice a week. So tell us about how you're doing it and time from a time perspective. A lot of teachers feel like I don't have enough time.
Mhm. So in our literature unit in the morning, we have probably, I guess, 30 or 40 minutes. And we open that s- part of the day with practicing recitations. And then we go straight into narrating. We are narrating Cinderella, Brothers Grimm. I didn't get to start it. New poem, new saying, but I narrate every day in literature. Um, I narrate almost every day in history and science. If I'm reading a unit or reading a passage, I do ask for them to retell or just to recall what we learned over the last few days.
And so when you say you narrate, you mean you're practicing that in your
So
class,
sorry.
you're
Yes.
asking the students to narrate.
Yes. Yes, I read the passage, and obviously the passages have gotten longer. This now that they're first graders, we've had some short stories, so not super long. But I'm reading to them. I stop and I just draw a stick so that it's pretty random,
Hmm.
and I ask that student to recall what I just read in their own words.
Hmm. Good. And then do you ask students, do you have anything to add? Do you have other students who do they like to do that and
They
participate?
do, yes. But I've struggled with that. They do like to add, and if it's a short narration, I'll ask the student, "Do you have anything to add?" Or if they don't have anything to offer at all, who
Hmm.
can help
Hmm.
such student, and they get to choose the student.
Good.
I read that somewhere that they do
That's good.
choose the student, and I ask them to recall what that student
Good.
had told. Hmm.
That's good. That's good. That's good. How do you handle the student in your classroom who's a reluctant narrator? Do you have any of those, or do you have any kids that come in and they're afraid, or were, and now they've overcome it?
I do. I don't know that afraid was always the reason, but some of those boys I had last year, oh, they were not quick to respond. They would sit and stare at me and I would look at them and I would make it a very painful long pause as long as I could. Um, but I've noticed just over the last week, the same student is in my class and we started the year the same, not wanting to offer much. But we talked about how important this is for grading. I do grade narration and
Hmm.
as far as the details, the sequence of events that they've been able to tell. So we talked about that, and he's opened up more. Just today, we were talking about the Mesopotamia civilization and their form of alphabet. And he said, so if they were, his question was, if they were using clay tiles to draw pictures or write stories, did they have books? And did they have paper back then? And why did they use that? And so impressed. with
That's a
that.
good question coming from a first grader.
Yes, I thought
So
so
he's
too.
listening.
Yes. Yes. And that was a struggle. I was very unsure last year if listening well was taking place. But I'm
Hmm.
seeing the fruits of that this year.
Yeah, that's one of the things I tell teachers a lot is narration takes a long time for you, the teacher,
Mhm.
to get used to feeling like, is this actually working?
Mhm.
And I like it to explain it. It's like a peach tree. So I don't know how much you know about peach trees, but with peach trees, you plant them and you actually can't eat the fruit from them till they're about 4 or 5 years old.
Oh,
So it's like the tree has to establish it's producing fruit, but it's not edible. And I say this is kind of how narration is. You're producing fruit, but you're not really going to see it or even, taste the juiciness of the fruit. You're not going to like see the beauty of it all, experience
right.
the fullness of it. Till the students have been narrating about 3 years, and it even is like it's exponential if all of the school is on board with this. Like the parents, all of
Mhm.
the teachers from grade to grade. By the time those kids are getting into fourth grade, the teachers that are fourth grade teachers have full buy-in because they're seeing what has been happening all these years. So it really is a slow process, but that's also what is so important about understanding classical education. Classical education is so beautiful, it is so rich and so deep. It's not something that you're going to see fruit in very quickly, and you may go slower, but you're going so much deeper into so much. It's such a holistic and full education that what ends up happening is once the kids have been in this type of education for years and years, they end up passing. They may seem a little behind for a while, which is why I say to teachers, you feel like you don't have time to fit it all in, which you probably actually don't have time to fit it all in
Right.
because you're doing this, right? But the other thing is with state standards, like in Texas, we call them the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge Skills. I'm sure you have them in Arkansas. I don't know what they're
Right.
called. But you're a charter school, so you kind of have to pay attention to those, right? Because you've got the
Right.
STAR, well, you don't have the STAR test, but you have whatever state test they have to take. When I dove into across the board, even with what is it, the standard core curriculum, I can't even remember what they called it anymore. Um, it's not core
Common
knowledge,
core.
that's
Common
huh?
core.
Common
Common
Core.
core.
Thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like I've gone into the Common Core, standards. I've gone into Maryland standards because my daughter homeschools in Maryland, and all of these standards require thinking, speaking, reading, writing, like, and being able to just articulate, being able, and if you actually dive into the nuances of how they want you to do this, narration like covers all of it. It covers so many standards. And
Yes.
when a teacher says, I don't have time to this, I'm like, actually, you don't have time not to do this because it covers so much more than if you segment trying to teach these skills into little categories.
Mhm.
You're actually covering so much critical thinking skills, so much analysis, and like all of I like to say, and I probably said this when I did your teacher training, the Bloom's taxonomy, all of those,
Right.
but
Right.
it's happening all at once. It's not like you're not waiting to jump from one skill to the next. They're always happening, right? Is that your
Mhm.
experience?
I no, I agree. And because I'm so new as a teacher, um, we do pay attention to the standards here, but I have learned probably towards last year. I think last year I just began narration because I knew I needed to do it. I didn't really understand what would come from it. I just knew I needed to do it. And probably by the end of the school year, maybe the end of the summer, after a few more trainings, I realized that like I don't need to sit and ask, what's the setting of the story?
Right.
We gather that just in narration.
Yeah, right.
That and I did learn that they need to know what a setting of a story is, but
Exactly.
I don't need to ask them those factual open or
Right.
closed ended or questions. I don't need to do that.
Right,
Mhm.
right, right. It just comes, and then once they know the definition of what a setting is, they can, while they're
Yes.
narrating, they're going to say, "Oh, the
Yes.
setting of the story was." You don't have to ask it; it's
Right.
there. Yeah. So you're
Right.
teaching them the vocabulary of plot line, antagonist, like you can say, "Oh, so in the story today, what happened to the protagonist?" And that's going to bring a narration, and you're using the vocabulary they need to know for their, standardized testing what a protagonist is. but you're using that language when you're asking them to narrate, so they're learning and they're knowing how to have a conversation, and
Right,
it's very
right.
conversational, right? How have you? I know that you have helped some of the teachers in your school. Can you share some stories about how you've helped or encouraged some of them in narration?
So just in small conversations, as I made the transition from kindergarten to first grade, one of my team teachers wasn't quite sure if she was doing it well, doing it right. She had done a little bit of research, but I don't know that she understood that narration is not just about reading the literature, the beautiful story, literature story. It is about so much more than that. And so she plans science right now. And she now is, I don't, I don't want to just read the book and ask a few questions. Let's narrate it and let's recall some information. Let's narrate. Like I like to, when I planned history, I like to get some of that um, information loaded up front for the week. And then we have time to recall. We've got all week to recall, talk about it, and add an activity in if we need to. So she's been very inspired by understanding that narration can happen in science, it can happen in history. Probably not very good at math right now, but it can happen in all of the things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You got a copy of my book, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I have a section in there about math.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Let me
I got that
see.
right before school started, so I haven't had it.
I wasn't actually going to talk about my book right now, but since you're going on the math thing,
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
grab
try.
mine too.
Let me see where it's at. I here it is. Narration as an art in math. And so I really, really love a couple of books by Paul Lockhart. He wrote a book called Arithmetic and another book called Mathematician's Lament: How Schools Cheat Us Out of Our Most Fascinating Imaginative Art Form. And he's talking about math. And
Okay.
it's a very good book. So I put some quotes in here from him to just kind of make the argument that we a lot of what my book is about is narration as an art, the
Mhm.
liberal arts, the trivium arts. Like, I'm really emphasizing art.
Right.
It's not a tool. That narration is not a tool. It's actually an art. It's a communication skill. So it's an art.
Mhm.
So you can do it in all different ways. There's all different mediums. You can play with it. You can have them sing their narrations. And I would love for you to try that because I think that it would be really fun, and it kind of freshens things up a little. You can have them act them out, and maybe you've done some acting out
I
narrations,
did.
dramatic narrations. Okay, so I
Just
want you to share
recently.
those.
Yes.
Definitely share. Let's talk about that in a second here. But with math, there. So you don't always want to like say to the students, "Okay, now narrate." You can use some creative prompts, and so just the prompt, tell about
Okay.
whatever it is. Okay. Explain what you know about. You can use these for math.
Okay.
Explain what you know about,
Oh,
or tell about how you solved that problem. Come up to the board and explain how you got there. Have them come up to the board and demonstrate how they solved the problem, but have them speak it in every step. So they're actually using math vocabulary while they're showing how they got the problem, demonstrating it. And what this does, it's very powerful because they're having to connect they're connecting their verbal to their mental to their written, okay? And it's causing it to stick more, but
mhm.
it's also going to help that student. So let me just give you an example.
Okay.
I was one of those kids who would be, the teacher would teach it, she would, you know, give you a problem, and then she'd call on people for the answer, and everybody else had the answer right and I had it wrong. And then she'd just move on to the next thing. And I never knew why my problem was wrong because she was just ticking through her checklist for the day,
Right.
right? This is why I'm so passionate about narration, because I was that student. I
Okay.
was I have dyslexia, dyscalculia, auditory processing disorder. I was that special needs kid that had all these issues. Narration would have helped me a ton.
Hmm.
And I fell out of my chair all the time. I was that child. I had ADHD, but back in the 70s, it wasn't a diagnosis. I was diagnosed with hyperactivity and I was on medication for it. So yeah, that was me. So If the teacher had said to one of the students, yes, that's the right answer. Can you come up to the board and demonstrate how you got to that answer? And I want you to tell us step by step exactly what you did. I would have been able to learn from another student how they got that answer instead of just hearing it only from the teacher. So it's like with narration, you're telling the student to put it in their own words. So
Mhm.
the students get to hear the story a second time, but not from the book, from the words of from the listeners, right?
Right.
And so it's the same thing with math. If you have a student come up and demonstrate how they learned it, I would have heard it a different way than the way you taught it. Does
Right.
that make sense?
It
So
does.
you're having the student narrate it and it's going to help that student who's really struggling. Same thing with grammar. You're looking at a sentence on the board and you ask the students what part of speech is it? They say noun and you say right. Okay, so now tell me where the adjective is, right? No, don't do that. Say how do you know it's a noun?
Okay.
Have them articulate back, because the student who didn't know it was a noun and got it wrong, they're going to wonder, well, why isn't it a noun? Or how do you know that? I thought that was the verb, or whatever. So
I
just
love
asking a
this.
lot of questions. So having the students, you have to have all these questions in your back pocket. Like, how do you know is the number one question you're going to have in your back
Okay.
pocket all the time.
Okay.
Never yes or no. When they give you the answer, you say, how do you know? Even if they got the answer wrong, you say, well, how do you know? Because what they do then is they'll either go, well, I'm not sure how I know. Can somebody help me out? And
Mm,
the other student is going to say, actually, it's not, it's this. And they're going to help each other out in a very civilized way. So it creates an atmosphere of trust and humility,
sure.
which is what we want in a
Absolutely.
classical school, because we're teaching virtue. So you're actually creating a moment for virtue to happen, right? Because we
Yes.
learn virtues through experience, not through a lecture. So you're
Ab-
creating the virtue experiences when somebody gets it wrong and you ask them, can you explain how you got that answer? They come up, they explain, and then they go, oh, actually, I did it wrong. They self correct.
yeah.
Or they get stuck and they ask another student, okay, you can say to another student, did you get this answer? You ask the student, okay, turn around and ask everybody, did they get that? Did anybody get a different answer? Okay, can you come up and explain and demonstrate how you did it? So it creates this beautiful conversation. It takes longer. You might only get one math problem done, but you're going so deep with it and you're getting all of those kids who, or maybe two or three kids who are stuck. You also might be discovering half of your kids also got the wrong answer, but it's because that means they still need to work on this as a teacher. So you're not ready to move on. You need to stay there for a while. So that's how I do narration in math. So in my book, I say, okay, describe the relationship between blank and blank. So that's a math. You can use that for math. You can use that for you can use that for science. You can use that for
Yes.
literature. Demonstrate on the board and explain in complete sentences each step you did to solve blank. Illustrate in picture a math concept and explain it to a friend. That's a narration.
It is. It is.
Create an original math riddle. These are in my book. Create an original math riddle and explain your process of solving it. Tell back what your partner did to solve the problem. So you're, doing math together in partners. So there's a lot of things anyhow. So hopefully now you have some ideas for math.
I do. I'm inspired now.
Yeah,
For sure.
a lot of people feel like I can't do this in math. How do I do this in math? So I was like, I had to put this in my book. It's a very small section, but it's there. So tell our listeners how you play with narration. What are some fun things you've done that the kids have received well?
So recently, in our scope and sequence, we were going to do the little boy who cried wolf, and it was a drama. And I had to go to the research. I'm like, how am I going to do this? How do I get these students prepared? And please tell me, I'm not sure I did it correctly or if I could have done it differently or better. But I narrated the play. Well, when I say I narrated, I read it, parts of it, and they would read back or they would tell back to me parts of the drama from start to finish. And I would talk about the announcer says this, the shepherd boy says this, and what kind of like could have done a better job of like leave the stage, enter the stage, that part, lesson learned. Um, we took the first week just to get to know the story because it was a little bigger than what we had heard in kindergarten, this version. And so the next week I did, and I know you shouldn't narrate again, but I had a week that I needed to work on, and um, I wanted to make sure we did it well because this is the first time they had done something like this outside of drawing their favorite part or sequencing, with colors. And so I split my class into 3 groups. They did not know who their part was until right before they performed. And so we narrated again that week, like Monday and Tuesday, and my first group performed. They, like I said, they did not know their part until that moment. And I would help them a little bit, um, navigate through the play, but many were still retelling in front of the class the story through
So, did you actually read it to them several times and have them narrate several times, and that was how they learned it so they could perform it?
I would say the first week we took longer. I narrated, I read and for the whole week, and then I did read it again the following week on Monday. Not read it. It was this is I would stop at a part that was a good place to stop and ask them to tell me back in their own, what took place. And that at that point I wanted to say that Shepherd Boys, John said this, or whatever the part of the drama was. And so I would say I think maybe 3 times, just
Hmm.
because it was a drama, and I really didn't know
Yeah.
how to get there, but we had a few, I students brought in a few props, so we had the shepherd's hook, we had white hats for the sheep, and they did really well
So,
considering.
when they performed it, did they actually go into the part and speak?
Yes,
That's really fascinating. So, I've never thought of doing it this way. Like
right,
this is so interesting because like so normally we narrate, we read the story one time, we narrate.
right,
Okay. We do with one reading. But what you were doing was you were preparing them to perform,
yes,
which so you had to kind of read the story over and over, and then like it sounds like they made up the script as they made up the script based on having read and narrated the story 3 times. It was
it was
instead of
scripted.
memorizing a script, they sort of ad-libbed their script as they
It was
acted it.
scripted. It was scripted as a story, so it was already scripted.
Okay.
But, um, yes, we reread it so that they could get up and perform. If they were the, announcer, or they were the one of the farmers, they were if they were Farmer John or whatever, then they would know that their part that they needed to, so they had to be prepared really for the entire drama,
Wow.
um mhm, and it went really well. Not perfect, but
Yeah, that's really fascinating
it
to
went
you
really well.
to use narration as a way to prepare for a scripted little drama and reenactment. That's really cool. So what I was thinking though is like sometimes you can read a story and you
Mhm,
can have instead of them sitting in their chairs and
mhm,
narrating, you
mhm.
can call 3 or 4 kids up and say, "Now I want you to narrate by reenacting out the
I
story."
love that. See, I'm getting so many ideas. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I took what I learned and researched, and I felt I've got a good foundation. And now I'm learning how all of the ways I can just add to it and
Yeah.
make the process even
and
better.
and so what you can also do is have fun. So this is another thing in my book. Let me find the
Mhm.
find the page. I'm only going to my book because it's in my book and I don't have it in my head. um I just have it. I spend a lot of time researching and I write things down, and I'm one of those people that has to look back a lot. Okay. So variations for oral narration, there's the individual narration, kind of like what you're doing where you're calling on different kids to narrate. There's the a partner narration. Have you ever done partner narration where they turn to their partner, narrate to your partner, and then I'm going to call on that partner to narrate? You've
Yes.
done that.
Probably not in the true narration, I guess, sense, but we've done maybe not in the true narration sense, but something along those lines. Yes.
Okay, okay. And then you can do dramatic and singing. So you can have them act out a scene from the story. This
Mhm.
could actually be really fun too if you've actually read a little novel, a little like a longer story. Then you can put them into little groups of 3 or 4 and say, I want you to work on one scene, whatever scene you want from the story. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
And then you can then have them all work together in their little groups and then you can call them up and say, okay, I want you to show us what scene you acted out. And then you can ask the rest of the class, what scene did they act out
I love that.
from the story?
Right.
Right. And that's
Our
just a
stories
fun, because this is the thing, narration's an art, so you need to play with it and have fun so it doesn't get stale.
right. Right, and I don't wanna get there. Our stories are just now getting a little longer in 1st
Mhm.
grade, so, I love that.
And then illustrative narrations, you can just have them, you should have a narration book that's just specifically for illustrations.
Oh,
So just have them quietly draw a narration from something that you had read. Not the whole thing, but like draw a scene from the story I just read. And you
we
collect that and grade that. That's their
oh,
narration grade.
alright. I
They
love that.
can, I mean, first grade's a little bit young, but when let's talk to the third grade teacher. They can make it like a little comic strip. They can add dialogue
Mhm.
if they want to. And then there's also silent narration, which is great for when they're like even fourth, fifth grade and up, where they actually, after you've read, you tell them, close your eyes, I want you to silently narrate.
Okay.
Give them a few minutes to do that. And then they can open their eyes and you keep reading. And then they're silently narrating.
I do vaguely remember.
And I think this is a really good practice because it teaches them to reflect,
Right.
right? But you don't want to do silent narrations until they're advanced at narrating. So that I would never recommend that. Like your students narrating from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, by the time they're in third grade, they're actually going to be probably ready for written narrations and silent narrations. They're going to be advanced. So those are more advanced. Yeah, and then bullet point narrations are the most advanced, and that I won't get into that. That's
Mhm.
a little more complicated, but it's to help them not have to take notes in class. So the teacher lectures. This is for older kids. Like let's
Mhm.
say they're in biology class. The teacher's teaching a lecture. Every 10 minutes, they need to pause and say, now I want you to bullet point everything you remember.
Oh,
Give them a few minutes to do that and then go back to your lecture. This is what you do instead of taking notes. Because as you know, narration helps you to attend better.
right.
Whereas if you're taking notes, you're only half attending.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, but anyhow, you could put some ideas into a hat and say to the kids, okay, let's see what how we're gonna narrate and pull it out. Oh, we're gonna sing. Let's sing
Love
our
that.
narration.
Yeah, I
Because
love
I
that.
think first graders would really like that. I don't know that like seventh graders might not really like that, but I think kindergarten, first graders
Yeah.
might like this thing. And they
Yes.
could just stand up and sing the narration, and it's just very spontaneous and fun.
I'm going to do that very soon. I am.
But I would maybe let them volunteer because they might really get scared.
I
your
better
your
let
child who loves to sing is going to be wanting to do it.
say I've got some bold students in here. I'm excited.
Yeah, that'll be really fun.
Mhm.
So, all right. Well, this was really a great conversation. Is there anything else you would want to share about narration, like something that you think would be encouraging to teachers who are listening?
I think yes, starting off, we don't know what we're doing. We have to research it. We have to put forth the effort to just kind of figure it out, if you will. Um, but I bought into it. I love it. It's it's become a passion of mine here. And my admin, they know I'm into narration. And if you have a question, from what I know, I think I've got a good foundation. Adding all of this nice, fun stuff has inspired me even more. It's very hard in the beginning. You really
Mhm.
do feel like you're dead in your tracks, like it's going nowhere. But the fruits come, like you said, much, much later. I'm getting to see that, and I love that I've got to move up with some of my students to first grade, that I get to see the young man that really could never narrate or would never narrate to now he is, and he's asking really good questions.
Mhm.
Um, it's painful. It feels painful. It feels awkward, but just keep doing it. And all of the things that the children know, like my students know to expect that whatever we read, we're going to talk about. And I'm going to ask someone to tell me in their own words what we read. Just keep
Mhm.
doing it.
Actually, it's making me have one more question.
Mhm.
Um, some of the students in your class that maybe are new, they didn't narrate last year, either new to the school or they weren't, their teacher wasn't really into it last year. Is there a difference between them and the kids that you had that were narrating?
I do see that. I do. I have a few students that are new to the school. Um, Very apprehensive, just kind of like not doesn't unsure. One particular girl, um, I so impressed that she was able to give me back those details. And she had never experienced narration. I believe she was in a public school prior to here. I do notice a difference in my students compared to those that were in another class last year that did not experience narration on the level that we did in my class. Um, Much better listeners.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. What do you think you do that helps your students not feel afraid to narrate?
I think I'm passionate about it. I'm excited about it. Um, the student this year that had never done a recitation, had never narrated before. Um, One of the things just calming her fears, like I said, everyone in the class, raise your hand if this was something you were scared to do last year. And everyone raised their hand. I said, they understand where you're coming from. They
Mm,
know why you're scared, and it's okay. There is no one in here thinking anything different. Just go.
mhm,
And she
mm,
did. Hmm.
mhm. Did you start off with picture study at the beginning of the year?
This school year or last?
Well, I guess last year.
I didn't do very many. I think that was something I maybe tend to forget a little bit, but we very much are doing picture studies this year. Um, and I'd love to hear your feedback. One of the ways I approach for science or history, we look at just our curriculum book so that they're not busy. I just read something today that they don't need those busy visuals in front of them when we're
Right,
trying to engage with the words.
right.
And so one of the things that I noticed a few weeks into school is that they're just fidgeting with the book. They're looking through it. So we started with the picture on the page for science or history. Tell me what you notice or what you wonder. Actually, we study it for a minute. I don't take it away because at the time they had their books. Tell me well, I just want you to study it. And then now tell me what you notice. But I would pull sticks and I would call on a few or pull sticks so it's more random. Tell me what you notice or what you wonder about. Um, some really good conversations like a bee. Why is a bee yellow and black? Um, Maybe it's because the pollen is stuck to their bodies and it hasn't taken it back to the hive yet. And that yellow is pollen.
So, yeah, and do you have them close the book and not look at the picture and tell back what they remember?
I have not, but I know I should. I do know that. Yes.
But
If I take it up, go ahead.
it's interesting to me though, because what that's doing by having them look at the pictures and asking them those questions before you read it, you're hooking them, and now they
Yeah.
want you to read it
Yes.
to them. They're not
Yes.
just like, I don't want to hear this. I'm bored. I don't want to listen. So
You
they're
are
actually
exactly right.
listening for the answers to their questions,
You are exactly right.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So, in picture study can just be also, I always like to tell schools, start off your first week of school with picture study as your narration, the first week or two, and then an Aesop's fable because they're short.
Right.
Because those students who are new to narration, picture study is such a great way for them to narrate what they remember in the picture without like feeling so afraid they're going to get something wrong, because everybody can remember something they saw
Right.
in a
Right.
picture.
Right.
So it's easier than listening to a story, especially because so many kids today, they're coming to us with a lot of visual stimulus and they're not quite as good at the auditory listening just yet
Hmm.
because they've
Hmm.
been watching TV all summer or whatever.
Right.
Okay, well, I think that we've covered a lot,
Mhm.
and I'm sure a lot of teachers are going to feel really encouraged. I always end my podcast asking if you have a quote that has had, an impact on your life, or a book that you wish you had read sooner in your life. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
I'll share two things. I don't know that it's a quote from a book. And you know what? I may have just forgotten. Oh my gosh, I just forgotten the man that said it. But last year, I really worked hard and focused on adding quotes on perseverance or integrity or honesty, working hard, and in my history units. And one of the quotes was read the best books first. And so they noticed they loved that quote. They read it all. Anytime we saw a Caldecott Award sticker on a book, they always mentioned read the best books first.
I love that. That's going to go with them forever.
Forever, yes. I actually want to put it on my wall somewhere in my classroom, but I can't quite figure out how to do that yet without it costing so much to have it in such big, bold um, letters or font. I'm so excited, but um, I haven't done that yet. But it's
Yeah,
on the.
now I'm gonna have we're gonna have to I'll look up and we'll have to figure out who said the quote. So we'll put it in the show notes. I feel it almost sounds like something John Sr. would say or C.S. Lewis.
I think it was Thomas. I cannot believe I knew his name until this moment. But I
That's
think
okay. We'll figure it out. We'll get it in the
okay,
show notes.
okay, all
And then
right.
did you want to share about a book?
I think a book, honestly, is the Bible. I grew up in church, but I didn't grow up in the Word. And my time here at this particular at Founders has been very insightful, inspiring, and understanding. Trying to find my way again, if you will. Like, so my husband and I have started like making it a very intentional thing, and it
Mm.
is reading the Bible.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing and coming on the show. I'm really excited to launch this episode because I know it's going to really inspire a lot of teachers.
I hope so.
So, thank you.